about the Apple. I'm really excited to be meeting with you all today, and we'll be able to go through some things. In a few minutes, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get started. But before that, I kind of want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Carlos Mercado. I live in South Carolina, and I work for Language Testing International. It's based in New York, in Tarrytown, New York, and I'm virtual, but I cover a lot of the East Coast and sometimes the Northwest. That's my territory, and I've been doing this here for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I worked for Pearson Higher Education under the ESL department. I love languages. I love what the power that it has for students, for adults, and I understand the need around it coming from a bilingual household. I grew up speaking Spanish, and I've been able to maintain it due to practice, and that's why I think it's super important. This is why I like working here. And now what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. If at any point there's any questions, if you put it in the chat, or if we wait towards the end, we could kind of answer those questions then. But I'm happy to help with it. So I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm a co-host, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Crystal, give me the thumbs up if you see that screen. Wonderful. All right. So today's webinar is called Language at Work, Making Your Apple Assessments Matter. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about LTI and ACTFL and its partnership. ACTFL, as you all may know, is a nonprofit membership organization with about 13,000 language professionals. It develops the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, which is what we all use here in the United States. It's the international standards for proficiency. It developed valid and reliable assessments in all modalities in over 120 different languages, anywhere from grade 3 up to adults. A lot of people use our assessments, whether it's through K through 12, in government agencies, and all across different professional entities. Language Testing International works with ACTFL. We are the official licensee of ACTFL since 1992. We deliver about 1 million tests per year, and we've been testing in 120 languages in approximately 60 countries, and we're growing, by the day. So that's a little bit of background information. On today's agenda, what we're going to do is what I hope happens here is that I hope we're going to understand the different types of assessments. We'll explore the Apple and its use of how to build a program relevance, understand how assessment features can empower teachers and learners, and then we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. So today's language landscape. Let's start with looking at today's language landscape. We'll hit a few of these key points. So languages are spoken globally. Language enrollments in school, we'll talk a little bit about that. Multilingual learners in the United States, validation or recognition of multilingualism, which is something that, I find very, very important, and the value of multilingualism in the marketplace. All these really touch our everyday lives and as we're working with our students. This report here was published in 2019, which seems a little bit a while ago, but you can only imagine how much more it's been growing since then. So some of the points here is that 9 out of 10 US employers rely on multilingual employees. That's huge. 56% of them say that language demand will increase in the next 5 years. So that was in 2019. We're pretty much there now. So it has increased from then, and I can only imagine it to continue to increase. 1 out of every 4 employers lost business due to the lack of foreign language skills. That is another big impact. And the most in-demand languages are Spanish, Chinese, and French. So those are very, very important that we continue to foster these students to remember to use these languages if they hold them, if they have them, and to also just practice every single day to improve their proficiency. Over here, we're looking at a map of the Seal of Biliteracy, which is something that I know that a lot of you over in Nebraska are working on. The Seal of Biliteracy is recognized now in all 50 states. North Dakota was the last state, and they just got on board about 3 months ago. So it takes the form of the seal that appears on the transcript of your diploma for graduating seniors, and is a statement of accomplishment for future employers and college admission. The Seal of Biliteracy is now accepted for college credits in Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, and Minnesota public universities. Specifically, colleges in the state of Illinois recognize the seal as an equivalent to 2 years of high school languages. So that's really, really important, and it's awarded for equivalent course credit to students who earn the seal. Additional institutions around the country are also awarding credit for the seal of biliteracy, using it in placement and using it to fulfill general education language requirements. So today we want to kind of discuss, like, what are your goals? What do you want to measure? There are different ways to effectively measure those language skills that the students are developing. So we have aptitude tests, which essentially look at how well a person can learn a new language, new language skills. A school might use it for students to qualify for an IEP, for example. Diagnostics, tests identify strengths and weaknesses in specific areas. Teachers can use a diagnostic test to address learning gaps. Then we have placement tests. Placement tests are to group learners and help them get the best course aligned for their ability and their needs. Achievement tests measure the knowledge of content covered so far throughout the year. So those are very, very important assessments. And then we have proficiency tests. Proficiency tests are tests that measure the ability to use the language in a real life situation, regardless of the curriculum. The focus on the practical application of knowledge, which might have been addressed in the past, but in an achievement test, for example, focuses on practical application of knowledge measures, comprehension and production against the rating scale and such of the ACTFL, ILR, and SEFR skills. Then we have formative assessments. Formative essentially is testing that takes place along the way. This can be formal, like vocabulary test, or informal, like walking around the room and listening to a partner conversation. So those are formative assessments. We have summative assessments, which are assessments that is a culminating and is often something that at the end of the unit or the end of the year, some tests can be used both as a formative measure throughout the year or a summative measure at the end of the year. So there are different types of assessments, and we're going to be discussing a lot of those today. Okay, so over here we have our actual assessments overview. So now that you're experts on the different types of assessments that we talked about, what you might choose for different purposes, let's look at specifically ACTFL tests. There are criteria referenced proficiency assessments. So over here on the left-hand side, we have the OPI, the WPT, the APPLE, the ALIRA. We have TEP, we have the OPIC, the LPT, the RPT, the CAT, the AAPPT, and the OPI and WPT seal of biliteracy bundle. So actual proficiency guidelines are the framework. External evaluation is used to validate the test, something commercial test providers do not do. And raters are all ACTFL certified. So any of these assessments that we have here are validated by an external source. Today, we're going to be focusing on the APPLE. And if you have any questions about any other assessments, please feel free to let me know. Again, these assessments on the left-hand side are for our K through 12. Here you see the assessments that are developed for various age groups. The APPLE tests anywhere from third grade through K-12, the third grade to 12th grade. The ALIRA tests anywhere from 5th grade to 12th grade. And the OPI and WPT is specific for the seal of biliteracy. That's for our less commonly taught languages. Towards the end of my presentation, I'll share with you a slide that will explain some of those languages in case you're interested. All right, this is one of my favorite slides because I really do believe that it explains well what the assessments are like. So for the APPLE, it's an online assessment. Again, it's been developed for grades 3 through 12 to emphasize the relationship between the classroom performance and real-world proficiency language proficiency. We test in 3 modes of communication. We have our interpersonal, our presentational, and our interpretive. And I'm going to go through each one. Our interpersonal listening and speaking is one of our most highly taught parts of the assessment. It is a conversational approach where students have an opportunity to listen and watch someone ask them a question, and then they're able to answer that question while recording their answer. There's 18 different prompts for that part of the assessment. It takes about 30 minutes. Presentational writing, that takes about 30 to 45 minutes, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, and shouldn't take longer than an hour for your students. There are 6 different questions allowing your students to do many different types of writing, whether it is to inform, persuade, emails, anything like that will be allowed, will be part of the assessment. And then you have the interpretive listening and interpretive reading. There are 6 questions for each particular part of these assessments, with 4 Quizlets underneath each question, allowing the students to either read or listen to a passage and then direct an answer based on what they're listening and reading. Again, each part of those assessments about a half an hour. So when you're thinking about delivering the apple as a whole, especially for the seal of biliteracy, which you do need all 4 sections to qualify for the seal of biliteracy, think of maybe a total of 2 to 2.5 hours, but those 2 to 2.5 hours can be split throughout different days. It doesn't all have to be in one sitting. Once you've ordered the assessment, the schedule lands on your end in order to determine whether or not how you are going to deliver the assessment. The students do, once they started part of an assessment, we suggest that they finish that one part of the assessment before they move on to the next one. Okay? Each section is introduced by a coach, which we find that has really helped students kind of manage their test anxiety when it comes to this assessment. She reminds students, again, this is a proficiency test, an assessment about what you do know, not about what you don't know. We want to have these students just be able to give us everything that they can in a comfortable setting, and use the language that they've learned throughout time. And our communication, it highlights modes in technology-based context. So anything that is on this assessment, your students have already been able to have conversations around in their target language, in their natural language. These are the languages that are covered in the apple. We have Arabic, Chinese Mandarin, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. We also have Latin for the Alira. All these assessments qualify for the seal of biliteracy. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about performance and proficiency. Actwell has described the difference between performance and proficiency. The apple is an assessment that helps learners use language that has been learned and practiced in a specific setting as they develop the ability to use language in real-world settings and in spontaneous, non-rehearsed settings. This positions educators to take an overall proficiency-based approach as they help learners develop their language abilities. The apple is something, it's something to remember. The apple is the only official ACTFL assessment designed for 3rd through 12th grade. It's tightly aligned with the ACTFL supporting elements, and content is rigorously reviewed and updated on a regular basis. We update our assessments every August and every September. August, the apple assessment gets updated again. Just a reminder, ACTFL creates these assessments. They are the creator of these assessments. We deliver it on our side, and we have tons of supporting material that can help you understand a little bit more about that, just to validate, ACTFL as the leader in the industry. This is one of my favorite slides over here because it explains a lot. Apple addresses various age levels of proficiency levels with each test form, which teachers and administrators can choose as most appropriate for their students. Form E is available for 3rd and 4th graders as an ILS portion. The ILS, again, is that interpersonal listening and speaking. That interpersonal listening and speaking is the only portion that's delivered to those 3rd and 4th graders. And that targets anywhere from a novice low to an intermediate mid. Form A addresses novice and intermediate levels and is designed for 5th through 12th graders. This is a form that you would deliver to your students if you don't really know if they are at that intermediate level yet. So you want to know if they're at that intermediate level, but that novice area, giving them that opportunity to still land in that novice area and be able to give you some data around it. So you can help the student reach that intermediate level and further to help them gain that seal of biliteracy by the time that they're in the 12th grade. Form B addresses the intermediate areas, giving a student to, as low as a novice high, questions as low as a novice high, but allowing students to reach an advanced low. So if ordering Apple tests for the Seal of Biliteracy awards, we recommend that the State Department often look at their website, their State Department website, to see what Apple score is accepted by the state. Many states require a score that can only be obtained by Form B, but every state varies. So right now, we're going to look at assessment features to consider. What assessment features can you look for to empower both teachers and administrators as well as students? What's important to you as a teacher? This list over here has a few examples of Apple specifically. Let's dig in a little bit, right? So the ease of administration, test demos. We have tons of test demos and supporting materials that dedicated to the support and a dedicated support team. Compliance with federal regulations and guidelines. Our security features are extremely rigorous and strong, and we have an accommodations team that helps us with students that have an IEP or a 504 plan. The student experience is very important to us as well as you as teachers because we want the students to feel comfortable, but there's clarity in instructions and the ability to take the components in multiple sessions really allow the students to feel comfortable and not tons of pressure to complete the assessment in one sitting. Rating and reporting and data analysis. After the assessment has been taken, the students' tests are immediately sent to our actual certified raters. There are parts that are machine scored on the assessment, like the interpretive and interpersonal listening and speaking, and others are rated by our actual certified raters, which takes up to 10 business days for you to receive those ratings back. And then the validity and reliability and actual certification. We are externally validated and we are rated. We are the official company that can give you actual ratings. So the ease of Apple administration, we're going to dig into this a little bit. Again, I talked about the demo. The demo is open to the public. You can go on our website and take a look at the demo, and it allows you to perform a demo with 2 to 4 questions for each part of the assessment, allowing you and the students to do it together. The students can do it by themselves, but it gives you an opportunity to really view the experience of the assessment. We have that. We have our actual and LTI resources to build familiarity with the comfort of the Apple. That is all located in our client site. Once you have access to our client site, you're able to access these. And we have tons of blog posts. We send them out on a weekly basis, and oftentimes you might be getting these. And if not, and if you'd like to join our blog posts or receive our newsletters, please let us know. We'll make sure that those get sent out to you. New for this year are details added about reason codes behind specific ratings. So there's going to be a time where your student might receive an NR code, which means not rateable. Not rateable, allowing you with this speaker over here to listen to what the student has actually recorded, and then an indicator over here. This information button will be giving you some reason codes. They'll offer great insight into your learner scores and assist you to support them and navigating the experience. So we count on teachers as part of the rating ecosystem, including alerting LTI about suspected academic integrity issues. If they feel something doesn't seem right in a rating or anything else, unlike other tests on the market, Apple has this added detail as reasons behind ratings, as well as formal process to request rating reviews. So if you don't agree with a certain rating, we suggest that you first listen to the student's audio, and then you can request a rating review right from the client site right over here. So that, again, works with the ease of use for the administration. On this page, we see a few highlights and resources available to students, to parents, and administrators, teachers, and district leaders, such as Apple demos, which I mentioned, but we also have the sample score reports, videos, and a lot more. Support based in the US and also available in Spanish. So we have tons of options. This page over here will give you many things. We have our Apple Central page. Apple Central is a wonderful place for you to show your students what videos created by actual students that have taken the assessment with tips and trends to help them perform better on the assessment and to understand what to expect. Score descriptors and sample score reports for you as instructors. Also, this over here will allow you to see our email address to send, if you have any questions, to our dedicated LTI support page, and phone numbers, a phone number that you can reach us Monday through Friday from 8 to 7 p.m. So we talked a little bit, and I briefly mentioned the academic integrity. As mentioned, you can see how academic integrity issues that may have been flagged when a test has been rated. Sometimes that happens. Here's a quick glance at the specific practices in place to help ensure academic integrity. When students take the assessment, before they take the assessment, we ask them to agree to an Apple honor code. So over here, I'll read it briefly. It says, during the Apple, I will not help any other classmates. I will not get help from classmates. I will not leave the Apple to go to the internet. We have security features already in place. If a student is taking the Apple assessment and attempts to open up a new screen, it will automatically kick the student out of this assessment. The student does have the opportunity to go back into the assessment to complete that assessment. But if it happens multiple times, it will get flagged. And then it'll be a question about academic integrity, and we'll take a look at it. The actual certified raters are trained on this to be able to take a look at it and make sure that everything is fine, which most of the time it is. It could be anything. If a student logs off for any other reason, let's say there's a fire drill or they get sick or anything in that nature, they're allowed to do that. And that's part of the features that makes it comfortable for the students to take this assessment. Again, our protection for student privacy. Apple and Alira are the only K-12 tests with COPA certification. Apple and Alira test portals and websites have been awarded the Prevo COPA Safe Harbor Seal for meeting the highest standards for protecting children's privacy. We do not collect any student information. We don't collect email addresses or anything like that. On your end, as you're registering the students for the assessment, you put in information like their student name, first name, last name, student ID. On our end, we cannot see that information. We only see them as numbers. So you can feel comfortable knowing that any information that is delivered through the client site for the Apple testing is in a safe place for your students. Other security features, which are really robust, are standard for the Apple, such as a browser extension blocked. So keyboard shortcuts like copy paste has been removed. The browser back button cannot be used, and extensions such as Google Translate and Grammarly have been removed. There's also a limited number of retakes. We do allow retakes, which is awesome for those students that are testing for the seal of biliteracy. Let's say the student for the seal of biliteracy receives the score to achieve the seal of biliteracy in 3 out of the 4 sections. So they still haven't reached it on that 4th section of the assessment of the Apple. They're allowed to take that assessment again. We do suggest that the student takes time to study and to prepare for the assessment so they can take it again and reach that particular level. Now, after they've taken an assessment the second time, they would have to wait 90 days in order to possibly take it a third time if they needed to. So again, the students are allowed to take the Apple twice within a 90-day period. After that second time, they would have to wait an additional 90 days to possibly take it a third time. Along with the privacy and security issues, LTI is dedicated to accessibility across all test platforms. As many schools are aware, being compliant with web content accessibility guidelines, it's important to consider these days. We have many accessibility features built in automatically into the Apple, as well as a process for specific needs that may be detailed in IEPs and 504 plans and not a part of the Apple already. Those requests come into LTI and are handled through our accommodations team. Our accommodations requests can be either single or a bulk upload for groups of students that need this assistance. Now, there's already tons of stuff, and there's a section on our website dedicated specifically for accommodations. If you have any other questions around this, please visit our site. And if they need to dig in deeper, there's an accommodations email address that you can reach out to provide you with some more answers to your questions. Okay, now that was a lot about security, but this is the part that is empowering to both the teachers and the students. This feature cannot be ignored. Over here, our Apple's certificate and score report. So students receive an official certificate. You actually receive the certificate and you deliver it to the students. It's something you receive through our website. Note that the score report includes a detailed score description so that they understand their rating, as well as a strategy section that helps promote further learning, a hallmark of our authentic assessment. So over here on the left-hand side, you can see that this student took the assessment in Korean. Down below, you will see the different ratings that they received for each portion of the assessment, and then the date, the school, and a signature from our actual president. This is something that you can print out, even for those students that don't receive the seal of biliteracy. We've been noticing that there are students that may not be going into college but they might be going right into the workforce, and they might be able to use any certificate to show their level of language. This is something you can print for them. They can put it on a resume. They can put it in a portfolio of some sort. So this is a really, really powerful tool because this is validated throughout the entire United States. Over here on the right-hand side, you have our score description, our score reports and data report. So you'll see the score description for each part of the assessment, as well as a strategy. So for each section of the assessment, you'll see that, and then you'll see a strategy. Here's an example again, just a deeper dig into that. So we have interpersonal listening and speaking. You'll see that this student received an intermediate 4. And what that score description actually means. So this I4 means that you can keep the conversations going, but about yourself and your life by asking questions and describing or telling stories. So it kind of gives you an understanding, like what can the student actually do with this particular assessment, with this particular assessment score. And then a strategy. Practice telling stories from beginning to end. Once you've told a story, go back and add something. So it's giving you an idea. How can you incorporate this into your teaching? So here we have some data reporting tools. These are reports that will allow you to make changes in your teaching, or be able to kind of show the impact that you're having in your school, and how well your students are doing. So over here, you'll have different reports that you can, inside the client side, you'll have different reports that you can access to be able to prove this. You'll be able to look at scores by school. So you can determine, let's say you have different schools in your district. So you can look at this report and see how well they're doing. So you're able to see where they land on average. You could also see how well they're doing on average based on the national average. My students received an average of an intermediate 3 in the presentational writing, but the average for the country is an intermediate 2, which means you're doing so much better than the average of every other student that took that assessment. There are filters that you can actually add and remove to determine. You can do it by grade level, you can do it by language, you can do it by, I want to see how my heritage speakers are doing. I want to see how my first language learners are doing. And then you can look at scores by grade level. By grade level is one that I really like because it allows you to make changes throughout time. So I know a lot of you are using the Apple assessment for the seal of biliteracy, but more and more throughout the country, we're seeing this being used as a benchmark assessment, a goal-setting assessment. So you're able to see students that are taking this assessment in the 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th, and 8th grade, and determine how well they're doing and how their scores might change throughout time based on what you're teaching. So this is a really, really powerful data report that we offer in the client site. Again, over here, you're looking at scores by language. You can decide, I want to see how my students that are taking this assessment in Chinese are doing. I want to see how well my students are doing that are taking this assessment in French. So you're able to filter in many different ways. This is a report right here that really helps when it comes to seeing how well your students are doing throughout time. Seeing a student's progress over time can be empowering for both students and teachers. It also helps with conversations with parents. It also allows you to determine whether your students are on par, like whether they're following the goals that you set out for them to meet. Over here, as you can see, we have blurred out some information. We have student name. We have the student over here took this assessment from in different years. So in 2021, 2019, 2020, and 2021, again, the student took it twice in 2021. So you are able to see growth throughout time. Now, in 2019, they only took that interpersonal listening and speaking while they were in the 7th grade. And they received an I4. So they received a good score here. They were comfortable with that. Moving forward, they only delivered the presentational writing and the interpretive reading and interpretive listening, where you could see changes. They went from an intermediate 5 to an advanced 1, which is fantastic. It's also important to remember that actual assessments are externally validated. Content is refreshed regularly, and actual and LTI conduct regular on with LTI and actual conduct regular ongoing quality assurance process to maintain the integrity of the assessments. Over here, we have tons of white papers and studies that have been done by an external entity. So these particular reports that we have been done. This one was done by Wiley, where they're validating, there's a validity argument to support actual assessment of performance toward proficiency in languages. So they're validating the apple here. So this is really good. It's not only ACTFL telling you this is working. It is actually an outside source that's putting their name on it to let you know that these are actually valid assessments. And this is why we continue to do so. If at any point these are interesting to you and you would like to learn more about it, please visit our website. We have these available open to the public for you to access. Actual ratings and certification. It's important to remember that actual assessments are externally validated. As I mentioned, content is regularly refreshed, and actual and LTI conduct regular ongoing quality assurance processes to maintain the integrity of the assessments. So again, they're scored by certified ACTFL raters. Only the only assessment for 3rd through 12th grade that issues ACTFL ratings. It's designed to elicit and assess language consistent with ACTFL proficiency guidelines. And now we have a new machine grade scoring. For those students taking the presentational writing in Spanish, it is double rated. It is not only rated by an ACTFL certified rater, it's also rated by an ACTFL certified AI machine that we've been training for the past year. Currently, we're only doing this for Spanish, and we hope to expand this to the other languages because it has been extremely successful. So this is some of the ACTFL ratings and certification. This page over here really shows why ACTFL is a leader again in the industry. We discussed how schools across the country are using this and how using Apple to build a program relevance. So accepted assessments for the Seal of Biliteracy, and again, the Global Seal of Biliteracy. They use this data to inform curriculum and teaching strategies. You can use this. Validating heritage language speakers, which is huge. A lot of our heritage language speakers maybe don't believe that this is something that they can take. A lot of them don't know that they can get a certification on something that they've been brought up with, something that they've been learning from day one at home. And it really, really does help with the culture in the United States among diverse students. And it fosters opportunities for students with a valid, recognized measure of language ability. I think this is really, really important. I love the fact that a lot of schools now are delivering this to their heritage speakers. It's not only those students that are taking Spanish and French in school. There are students that speak Polish, Chinese Mandarin, that speak German, that speak Gujarati, that are actually gaining the Seal of Biliteracy by just learning and knowing this second language. It will really put them in a different level for our students. So make sure that if you can, share this with all your students at your school, anyone. Currently, we've been working with a lot of schools in the vocational tech area and computer technology education schools. So CTE and VOTech schools. And we're starting to realize how important this is in those sectors as well. A lot of times these students are graduating with a degree or with, they're learning how to weld, they're learning how to be mechanics or plumbers, but they also have this amazing tool in their toolbox, which is called multilingualism. It is huge. And they're able to take this Apple assessment, certify them. By the time they graduate, they're able to put this on a portfolio, on their resume, really setting themselves apart, allowing them to become part of the community, which is already helping tons of people here in the United States. How to use data to make programming targeted and relevant. So some patterns that you might want to consider. When taking the test, are you getting a UR or an NR code for tech issues repeatedly? Is there a low completion rate on certain tests or components? Are national averages going up? Are they going down? What's happening at our school? So a lot of this, based on the data that can be performed, that we deliver for you, will kind of elicit a lot of those questions. If you have those questions, these are questions that we can help you answer. ACTFL provides and has some sessions on their website for development, for professional development, that you can actually log on to their site, take a look at what you might need help with. these reports that we give you are not only to just tell you where your students are, but also allows you to elicit questions, right? What can we do? How are we doing? Where can we improve? Why are our students testing lower every year? What can we change? So it gives you an opportunity to really make changes. One thing on our website, on our client site now, if you've accessed it lately, this is a very new portion of our site where you, on that main page, if you scroll down to the bottom, you're able to see how many tests have been started, how many tests are in the pending mode, right in the middle of the area where we're still rating those assessments, and how many assessments have already been rated and sent back to you. So these are some really, really important features that we've added to our client site, which have been extremely helpful for teachers, is what we're hearing. Again, we've talked about how we can use this to build program relevance. Here are some things that teachers have said. So Fernando Rubio from Yale University uses the PW to answer research questions around writing development for students in Spanish DLI programming. Francesco Frato at Herrick's Public Schools in New York says using score reports and parent proficiency nights to educate parents on development of learners' language proficiency has been very helpful. Chris Lemon, who's been using our assessment for quite some time, uses using data reports to refine, program, and recognize growth as well as achievement. These are all blog posts. So if you're interested in looking at these, please feel free to jump on our site and take a look at these. This is extremely helpful because these are teachers that are just like you, that are using our assessments and finding different ways on how it's been helping their program. I know we talked a lot about the Apple, but I did mention a lot of our heritage speakers that have learned language at home. We don't have the Apple for certain languages, but we do have this OPI and WPT specific for the seal of biliteracy. The OPI is our oral proficiency interview, which is a phone call over the phone for students to have that conversation. It is about a half-hour conversation with an actual certified rater, will allow them to validate their language proficiency and also gain the seal of biliteracy. That accompanied with the writing proficiency assessment. Writing proficiency test will allow the students to complete a writing portion on this particular language. It takes about 40 to 50 minutes for that portion to be tested. Those combined for these languages are valid for the seal of biliteracy and global seal of biliteracy across the country. So keep in mind, if you have students that speak Bengali, Cantonese, Dari, Polish, Urdu, Ukrainian, if these students are coming to you or you're aware of them, or maybe you want to start promoting this at your school, any student that speaks another language, please come to us. Give yourself an opportunity to stand out from others and allow you to gain this certification before you graduate high school. It's extremely important. A lot of our students don't know this. A lot of our teachers hadn't known about these particular languages. So it's my job to make sure that you do know this. And if at any point you have any questions, our website, there's a specific spot where it discusses the OPI and WPT. But if you would like to have a conversation around this, reach out to your local rep. I'm the rep for Nebraska. I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you at any time. This is my job. My job is to help you, to help your students, to help your community. And it's really something that makes me happy and proud. So in addition to the seal of biliteracy, here's just a few things that can make your program more relevant to students. So again, we have the seal of biliteracy, which is, again, including potential college credit. We want to validate students' heritage, language, and culture. We want them to feel comfortable knowing Polish, knowing Chinese Mandarin, knowing Urdu is something they should be proud of. Oftentimes, we have people that come to the country that don't want to teach their don't want to teach their children the language, or they want their children to just learn English. But we cannot forget our culture. We cannot forget this. This is such an important feature of who we are and what America is. So we want them to be able to feel comfortable being able to speak these languages. You know, many times there's been moments where I've walked into, actually a quick story. I had gotten a speeding ticket when I was younger. I was about 19 years old. I had my first full-time job, and I was actually going on a date with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and we were speeding down this Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, where there There's no business. So I was going about 75 and I got stopped by a police officer and I received a speeding ticket on the way to meet my girlfriend's parents for the first time. For the first time. So I had to explain to them that I had gotten a speeding ticket, which was awful. By the time I had to go to court to pay the speeding ticket, there was a gentleman at the front of the line, and he was having a conversation, but he didn't speak English. He only spoke Spanish, and no one else, there was no interpreter there for them. And someone asked, is there anyone here that can speak Spanish? And I said, I do. I was allowed to cut the entire line. I didn't have to wait. I helped this gentleman with his problem. I was the next person they took care of, and they allowed me to pay half of my ticket, and it helped me out. So there's so many different ways. Not only did I help someone, but I was able to help myself. And it's something that we should teach. We never know when we're going to run into somebody that needs help. And that's something that's a story that I'll never, ever forget. So just think about that as you help your students. Another thing is a certificate on a transcript or a resume. This is very, very important. Oftentimes back a couple years ago when you were applying for a job, you could say, yes, I'm biliterate. And yeah, what do you speak? Oh, I speak French. Okay, cool. Say a couple words. Maybe we'll validate it that way. But now we have an actual certificate that really shows professionals, this is my certification. This is what I can do with the language. Which someone might say, there might be two candidates that say, one that says they speak French and the other one that says, well, here's my certification on what I can do with the French language. Be that candidate that shows that certification, because that's going to land you the job, because it shows that you've taken the time to validate your language proficiency, because it's important to you and also important to your employer. So keep that in mind. Remind your students of that, and it's really, really important to do that. Why proficiency test? Why the app? There's tons of reasons. Again, ACTFL ratings. It's the only test that can be assigned an official ACTFL rating. The performance towards proficiency. Apple assesses language performance toward proficiency in familiar contexts. So this is going to allow your students to be able to visit a country that they've wanted to visit and know that they can have a real life conversation, not something that they've been practicing so much in a book and something, but a real life conversation. What have you learned? How can you use this? In Spanish, we say something that's called ¿Cómo te puedes defender? How can you defend yourself in that language? Like how can, if you're in an issue, if you're in a situation, using that language in a different country, how are you gonna find a way out of it? How can you help yourself, help others, and how can your language really save your day, right? So that's really, really important. ACTFL professional development. So we, again, as I told you, that page on the ACTFL website, teacher resources and professional development workshops are available. Please take a look at those. They're phenomenal. A lot of our schools that have taken part in these have really come back with wonderful, wonderful things to say. And then ACTFL really trains and certifies their Apple raters. This is ACTFL's job. They are a not-for-profit. They do tons of research. So therefore, there might be things that you're like, oh, we want this, and it takes us a little while. And it's because ACTFL is out there making sure that anything that they put out is valid. It is something that is going to last. It's something that's going to be helpful to you, but also meets the standards. They spend their life doing research, and these are professionals, and I trust them, and a lot of our teachers and professionals do too. Our test security and accessibility, making sure that every student has a fair shot at taking this assessment. Any student that has an IP or a 504 plan. You know, our COPA compliance, also protecting our students from personal identifiable information. That is huge. There's been companies where information has been, taken from their websites where they have student information. We don't want our students' information out there. We want to make sure that we have taken every security measure possible to make sure that this particular assessment that's helping students is not putting them in a line of danger. So I can talk for days on why I believe that Apple is the way to go, but visit our website, take a look at it. It would be helpful for you to do that. And there's many things, and there's many reasons why I believe that Apple, ACTFL, and LTI are the way to go. And it's because a lot of teachers like you have become part of our panels. You've collaborated with LTI, you've collaborated with ACTFL to help improve our assessments, to deliver what's really going on the ground with your students. What are some of the issues we're seeing? What are some of the needs that you need? Being able to deliver that information allows us to find the proper solutions. And the more we hear from you, the better it's going to become. So please consider becoming a member of our educator panel or become an Apple certified rater yourself. So that can be found on our website. It can be super helpful. So that was a very long session of me sharing some slides. I'd like to pause there and say thank you for your time. This has been a really good opportunity for me to share with you a little bit about Actful's assessments, a lot about the Apple, a lot about why I think language is important. But I'm going to pause. I'm going to open it up for some questions. If you feel free to put them in the chat, or you can come off mute. Crystal, if there's anything that you want to add, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen, and then we'll be able to answer some questions if you like.
Thank you for the great presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all your own experience. Sometimes, people don't make connections. I mean, especially students. Yeah.
It's important. It's very important. I recently, and I have a lot of stories because I love language. Like sometimes it almost like chokes you up. Like when you think about how you meet people that you probably would never have met because you don't speak the same language. I have some friends that in South Carolina, they moved from Korea. They just came over from Korea, and they didn't know any English. They knew very little English. But I met them at the gym, right? So we started exercising together, and we go for coffee once a week. And they call me their teacher because I have conversations with them and we try to work things out. It's just such a beautiful situation. They've become great friends to me. And I'm happy to be able to do that and help them with some homework, help their children with homework. They're here on a sabbatical for 2 years, and then they're going back home. But I want to make sure they're comfortable. So it's a beautiful thing. Real life situations are important because that's, at the end of the day, each and every one of us have those. So if there are any questions about the Apple, about anything, if you want to share a story about your language, I'm happy to hear it too.
Yeah, actually, I have teachers asking about assessment. So I shared. Is it okay I share your email with the teachers?
Yes, please. I'm going to also put it in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. I have some teachers from smaller school districts. They are considering starting seal by literacy, so they need to find assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, there's a question that was put up over here, and I see that you have a teacher that came off mute. Do you have a question?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Your name, Mr. Mercado, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your speech. So I have a question. Is there like a website link where student can go to get some sample tests or like get some materials?
Yes, I'm gonna put the URL. Bear with me as I get on this. I'm gonna search for it right now so I can put it on there. It's called Apple Central. Apple Central is gonna be a wonderful page for students to access. So let me get that for you. And then I saw that there was a question in the chat. I'll read that one next.
Oh, the questions, there are fixed test dates for Apple assessment.
There are actually no fixed dates for the Apple assessment. So the Apple assessment can be taken throughout the entire year. It all depends on you. Once you register a student, it creates a username and password for that student to access the test. They have, then the schedule is up to you. We don't invoice you or charge you for any test that is not taken and rated. So the students would have to take the test, and we would rate the test, and that's when we send you the bill for the test. So let's say you have a classroom of 20 students. You enter the entire 20 students on the list. Only 5 of them take the assessment. We invoice you for only those 5 students. We do not invoice you for 20. Just make sure that the students don't access that assessment. The link that I've put on over here is called our Apple Central website. That is a wonderful site for information for teachers, students, and parents. If you have parents that have questions, there is a lot in there. The demo, you can search for the demo on there. Click on that demo, and it'll bring you to a page where you can select a demo for any language. Select the language that you'd like to take the assessment in, and you can take it in all 4 sections. It's going to give you a short version of our Apple. It'll be, a lot of the instructions will be in English. So just give it a shot, keep pressing the next button as you go through, and you will see that the language changes at the certain point where they're delivering that demo to the student. They just want to make sure that the student knows how to click through the assessment.
Okay, so as to the registration, is there a certain time? Yeah, I mean, like certain, time period, for example, of 2 or 3 weeks before they register, before the test?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Apple works very quickly. So let's say, for instance, I suggest, and Apple suggests that you do this within a week before the test, at least. You can do it months before the test. You can do it whenever. But the minute you enter the student registration, you get username and passwords instantly. So let's say, for instance, there's a student that comes out and says, I need to take the test tomorrow. Okay, you can do that. You can import that student information. You will immediately get a username and password, and that student can start taking that test right away. We do suggest doing it a week before, so especially your first time, right? If you're doing this the first time, you want to give yourself enough time to make a mistake, because there might be situations where you get a little bit confused. So we suggest about a week before, but once you get the hang of it, it's instant. You enter the student information, you receive the username and password, the student can take the test.
And then they can take it home, right?
So
Anywhere.
if there's an option to take the test at home, there's different ways. Normally the test is taken at school. So there's a proctor that we want to make sure that the students are being proctored. That way we know that the student isn't using their cell phone. They're not that we want to make sure that it's the actual student taking the test, not like I'm pretending to be somebody else taking the test in Spanish for, James, so we want to make sure that it's the actual student. If a student needs to take the test at home, we have 2 different options. For the Apple, though, for the seal of biliteracy, it's only one. It's an additional $4 fee to have it be computer proctored. So the computer proctoring will watch the student take the assessment to make sure it's that actual student taking the test. So the full Apple is normally a $20 assessment. With the proctoring, computer proctoring, where the student's being watched take the test, it's an additional $4, making that test $24. Now, if it's not for the seal of biliteracy and you're just using this part of the assessment for benchmarking or goal setting, let's say your younger students, if you're giving the student 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, they can take the assessment at home with parent proctoring. But parent proctoring doesn't qualify you for the seal of biliteracy. It only qualifies you for certain tests. So that part of parent proctoring is free. There's no additional fee for that. But just make sure that you understand that those scores won't be valid for the seal of biliteracy.
Yeah. So who can be the proctor in school?
The proctor can be a teacher. It can be any adult that can walk around the classroom while the students are taking the test, to make sure that they're not doing anything incorrectly. And we have a proctoring guide also, if there's any questions, things that teachers or any adult can do to make sure that the students are following, the code of ethics.
So the proctor should be like an employee, right?
Yes, should be an
In
employee.
the school. Okay. Yeah. And also just now you mentioned, sorry, I have so many questions.
No, I love it. This is great.
Yeah. So another question is about, how many times they can take. You mentioned that within 90 days, they can take at most twice, right? And then you
Yes,
have to wait another 90 minutes. 90 days. So within the 90 days for the first 2 times to take, is there like a requirement for how soon they can take?
So there is there's no official requirement. We suggest 2 weeks, right? So Actual suggests 2 weeks. If the student takes the assessment and does not reach a certain level, give them 2 weeks to practice again. They have to practice, or else they're going to probably reach the same level again. We want to give them time to practice and learn and to feel comfortable when taking the assessment that second time. Because then after that second time, they would have to wait 90 more days.
Yeah, right.
There are schools that I've seen that will give the assessment, they receive the rating, and then a week later, they give the student the assessment again. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. But you're putting that student in a place of maybe. And we don't want to, especially when reaching the seal of biliteracy, we don't want to give them that maybe. We want to give them the best shot that they have to create that, to make that seal.
Yeah.
There's
So
some questions. Sorry, go ahead.
I said there's not anything like in the system say, okay, no. Okay. Yeah.
But if you've taken it that second time and you try to do it a third time before those 90 days, it will tell you that you cannot take it. That's the one thing that it will say.
Thank you so much.
So let's say over here, is there a requirement for devices student use? So there is, the student should use they can use tablets, any tablet, they can use any computer, any Chromebook. The only thing that they cannot use is a mobile device. They cannot take an assessment on a mobile device. That's the only device that they cannot take the assessment in. Besides that, there are no other any kind of issues there. We also have a system requirement page. I like to call it, like when you're getting ready to get on a flight and you want to make sure that everything is set up. I call it the pre-flight check-in, right? The pre-test check-in. It is a page where your students can log on. It will make sure that your internet is strong, that your browser is up to date, that your keyboard works, that your earphones work, that your keyboard is set up the proper way, because you're going to need to type sometimes in a different alphabet. So it walks you through that entire process. So that is it also in that demo page. So as you scroll down through the demo page, you'll see a hyperlink. It's called the system requirements page, and that'll allow you to access it. There's another question here. So we cannot teach all of the content of life in our curriculum. What will be our recommendation to prepare students? Yes. Wonderful question. You can't teach everything. What I would do, there is a topics link on our site. You're going to see some topics in there, and those are questions that are surround the Apple. Not every question is going to touch on every topic. The topics do not change from year to year. The questions around the topics do. Now, the best thing to do is to have as much conversation in that language as possible. Any writing that you do for those students, have them write in that language, but also using the keyboard, so that when the day of the testing comes, they don't feel different taking the assessment than they do in class. We want to make sure that they are comfortable. But as much conversation, daily conversation, as you can have throughout your daily lives with your students about any topic, please have it in that target language. As a teacher, to prepare students for regarding the content, yes. Again, just try to have as much conversation and writing in that target language, but on a keyboard. That's the best way to prepare the students. Real life situations. So a teacher told me one time that it feels kind of like a social test. Again, we're talking about proficiency. So we want to make sure that, yes, they're learning a lot of grammar, they're learning a lot of vocabulary in the classroom, but how are they going to use that vocabulary to create an answer to a question? And that's what we're looking for. So different questions of any kind that you can provide your students on. Tell me a story about your first day at school. Tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me how to make a recipe to bake a cake, and they will have to create those kinds of answers. Those are the types of questions that are going to be asked in the actual test. Yeah. Crystal, is there anything else that you think we should touch on while we wait for some more questions to come in?
I think we get most questions answered.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Thank you.
Will anybody else? I know that Crystal will be attending Central States. If anybody's attending the Central States Conference in Minneapolis this year, I will be there in a couple of weeks, hopefully with my coat and a hat to cover my bald head because I'll be freezing. But I hope that if you do, I will be there. And if you want to stop by the booth to speak to me in person, I'd be happy to meet you. Just remind me that you joined this webinar, and I'll be, we can continue any conversations, or if any questions come up before then, you can either use my email address to email me the questions, or you can come speak to me in person. It'd be great to see you.
Great. Thank you so much. This is really helpful. And I do
absolutely.
have teachers have many questions, but those questions you have, I think in the webinar, you have answered most of those questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Crystal, again, feel free to, if you want to add me to an email, anything like that. If there's questions that I can't answer, I'm going to find the support to help us answer it. That's the beauty of our team. We have different professionals at every level that can help us answer those questions.
Oh,
so,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Again, I thank you all so much. No, I'm sorry.
I already recorded this session, so I can post online. So if anybody there are more teachers registered, but they didn't show up. Maybe there's a time conflict. They can still get access to this.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much. If you don't mind sending me the link also, maybe I'll post it on LinkedIn or anything like that just to get some more traction. We could continue to have those conversations.
Yeah, great. I will send you the link. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank you.
for being here and presenting for us on a Saturday morning. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure, honestly. Thank you all so much. And I look forward to seeing you, Crystal. Please stop by the booth.
Thank
I
you.
will.
Bye-bye.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye,
Have
everyone.
a nice rest of the weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.